As our crew here at the old Clapperboard head to Lone Pine, California for the 34th annual Lone Pine Film Festival, October 10th through the 13th, we are reminded to put on our best cowboy duds and get ready for a shindig with our Western movie historians and friends. We also will be visiting the Museum of Western Film History and my family's memorabilia, including the old Clapperboard. Every piece of memorabilia in the museum has a backstory, and so does the old Clapperboard.
This is an old Clapperboard's FYI memorabilia alert. The old Clapperboard's resurrection.
Quiet on the set. Take one.
This is a story about the old Clapperboard's resurrection, a story behind when and how I acquired it, a memory that I've kept all my life. You know, the kind you throw in a shoebox and keep it with you everywhere you move to, except maybe when you're in the service. For me, it's this old Clapperboard. It brings back many memories and connections to the motion picture business that live with me today. It's one of the reasons I started this blog. But before I start on this story, maybe you don't know what an old Clapperboard is. So here is the old Clapperboard's research producer, Miss Hedda Gossip, to quickly explain.
Clapperboards, also known as slate boards or film slates, were first introduced in the early 1930s during the transition from silent films to sound films. They were developed to help synchronize sound and picture. As sound recording became separate from the filming process with the advent of talkies, the Clapperboard combines two key features. The slate, or board, displays essential information like the scene, take, director, and production, helping to organize footage during the editing process. The clapper, a hinged piece at the top that is clapped shut, producing a distinct sound that is visually and audibly captured to help align the audio track with the corresponding video frame. Before the Clapperboard, filmmakers used slates without the clapper for labeling purposes, but the addition of sound required a more sophisticated synchronization system, leading to the modern Clapperboard's development.
My story about this old Clapperboard goes back to 1958-1959. It was on a Friday afternoon coming home from school, and my dad was home early. Not strange, but I sensed something was up. He said to me as I walked through the door, "I'm doing a night shoot tonight with a lot of action. You want to go? You'll be up all night." Well, heck yeah, what kid wouldn't? The show was called Rescue 8. He had done 3 episodes of Rescue 8, but I have a feeling that this was second unit stuff that he was doing for the production company. All I can remember is there was a lot of fire and emergency vehicles, big wind machines, hoses all over the place, and some of it to make rain, sirens screaming all night long. And oh yeah, by 4 a.m., my dad and I were sopping wet. Now, I need to rewind a little bit here. On my way to the location, I had mentioned to my dad if he thought it was possible to weasel an old Clapperboard out of the camera crew. He seemed preoccupied and answering sure, but I left it at that. I'd asked him many times before as he left for work, but understandably, he seemed always preoccupied thinking about work. You may ask why I wanted to use Clapperboard. Well, I had gotten an 8mm camera for Christmas and was going to make a movie. You gotta have a Clapperboard if you make a movie, right? Back in those days, sound was not recorded on the film. It was recorded on tape and attached during the editing process. So I certainly didn't need an old Clapperboard, especially for the clap. I just wanted it to be cool when shooting with my friends, my 8mm camera. Now, back to that night. The company had wrapped for the night, and Dad was thanking the crew when one of the crew members came over and handed him an old Clapperboard that they had been using. It even had his name on it as a director. They used to use old medical tape in those days, or cloth medical tape in those days, so they could write on it and change it as needed. Today, as you look at the back of that old Clapperboard, you can still see the tape that says Rescue 8. And that, my friends, is the story of how an 11-year-old boy and his prized possession started a journey together, now almost full circle, always reminding him of his motion picture heritage. When the Museum of Western History was built, I thought it best for it to live in my dad's memorabilia. But I need to correct a myth. The label on it, as it sits on display in the museum, says it was William Witney's clapperboard used during the serial days. That part is not true. But I can tell you for fact it was used on Rescue 8 action sequence that fake rainy night because I was there. We can use our imagination of what other shows it might have been on before I swept it away from its busy life on many other productions. I do know Rescue 8 was a Screen Gems production, living at Columbia Studios at the time of 1958-1959. So the old clapperboard could have worked on shows such as Father Knows Best, Adventures of Rin Tin Tin, Three Stooges, and I'll just leave the rest to your imagination. Currently, as we're recording this in September of 2024, the old clapperboard lives with a Quentin Tarantino Django Unchained display in the Museum of Western Film History. Well, the story has been told to me that Quentin saw it in my dad's display while shooting Django in the Alabama Hills and Lone Ranger Canyon. Quentin, being a big fan of my father's work, asked the museum staff if he could borrow it for a day or two to use on Django. This making the old clapperboard famous by using it with two famous action motion picture directors, William Witney and Quentin Tarantino. And that, as Paul Harvey used to say, is the rest of the story.
Okay, that's a wrap.